When Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope was first leaked, I made a video titled A Mario Galaxy RPG. This was partly due to the space aesthetic and of course Illuma being front and centre of the cover. As it transpires, that's exactly what the game was intended to be, as some very interesting information has come to light, revealing that Nintendo actively blocked the Ubisoft team from using elements from the Mario Galaxy games. In an interview, lead producer of the game Xavier Manzanez said the first discussions were, okay, we are going to space, so let's bring in a lot of things from Mario Galaxy. To me, that seems wise, the first game was based around the Rabbids invading the Mushroom Kingdom, so various elements were pulled from games based there, such as Super Mario Bros. And Super Mario 64, from characters to environments and music. Naturally, you'd again look at the appropriate source material, being Mario Galaxy, which establishes what space should be like in this universe. In an early build of the game, Manzanarez confirmed, "We had a lot of things in the environment from the Mario Galaxy games, but because Ubisoft was making the game for Nintendo, each asset and character that the company owned had to be individually approved." Allegedly, this was no easy task, as every meeting with them consisted of the same questions. What are you adding? Why are you adding it? If the Ubisoft team couldn't give a full explanation, they were denied approval to use the assets, which you can only imagine would discourage the team. So, what became of these Galaxy elements? In response to Nintendo's bombardment of questions, the team simply replied that they thought it would be cool, which I think it absolutely would have been, but this response did not satisfy Nintendo. The company as a whole seems to have this policy now that if it's not relevant to gameplay, get rid of it. But the point of Mario plus Rabbids as a series is that it's celebrating these franchises, something the previous game and additional content seem to achieve. For example, in the Donkey Kong Adventure DLC, there's a reference to the original Donkey Kong, and this music from Donkey Kong 64. Is this relevant to the gameplay? No, but it means something to the fans, and having it there enhances the experience. Ubisoft wanted to do something cool here, and Nintendo blocked it. It brings me back to Miyamoto's dislike of stories in Mario games, which is like a twisted sort of quality control. Their intentions are good, I'm sure, and I get they're focusing too much on story or trivial background elements from a 15-year-old game could draw the team's attention away from the core gameplay. But Mario Galaxy itself proves that a correct balance can absolutely be achieved. An example of media that disproves Nintendo's logic would be Spider-Man No Way Home. The film did amazingly well because of all the fuss surrounding Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield returning as their respective Spider-Mans. Their appearances were woven cleverly into the plot, and it was a huge deal to a lot of people, as these actors represented their childhood. Now, if you were to be original, you could have cast two new Spider-Men from across the multiverse, and they would have served the same purpose in the plot, but that's completely negating the fans' pre-established relationship with these characters, which elevated the movie to new heights. So, to be blunt, Nintendo, or more specifically, its current management, just doesn't seem to recognise this. There's no greater example than Nintendo Switch Sports, which is worthy of its own video. But sadly, Manzanarez concluded, in the end, we had to remove them. This is a traumatizing sentence. What were they? These elements could have ranged from returning environments to items and characters, enemies, maybe even bosses from the Galaxy games. And what did we get instead? Original characters. There's nothing inherently wrong with this design, but Rory the Tiger is pretty much the last thing that comes to mind when thinking of enemies you'd encounter on a galactic odyssey featuring Mario and the Rabbids. Another example would be Edge, who again feels at odds with both franchises and their respective aesthetics. From my understanding, the original concept of the game was that the Rabbids had merged with Mario characters, which begs the question of where half of these guys came from, as although merged with Rabbids, the base creatures like tigers and wolves originate from neither Mario or the Rabbids universes. Now, with the supposedly cameo-filled environment stripped back in favour of original ideas, I couldn't help but feel a constant series of missed opportunities while playing the game, and that's without the knowledge that this nostalgia purge had even taken place. These cannons could have been launch stars, we could have had galactic enemies like Octoombas, and despite all of the promotional material featuring a galaxy backdrop, we get some pretty bland daytime skyboxes in the actual levels, which, don't evoke a space feel at all. I think this is highlighted by the amazing artwork that we saw surrounding the game's release. This is not only high quality, but perfectly captures the Mario Galaxy vibe with a modern twist. I even spoke to the game's senior artist, Yves, on Twitter, who expressed his passion for the Galaxy games, whilst confirming my theory that this particular sky that transitions from day to night is indeed a reference to the iconic Galaxy 2 poster, with such a small detail managing to slip under Nintendo's radar. One hugely disappointing aspect of the game was the music. Not that it was an awful soundtrack, far from it, but once again this strayed so far from the source material that it just felt odd. Especially considering Mario Galaxy is most renowned for its music, and we got a total of one musical cue referenced in the entire game, being the Comet Observatory theme. Sound director Romain Brillard even says we listened to a lot of Mahito Yokoda's soundtrack, the composer of both Galaxy games, and he's actually the song supervisor for the game. Here too, the classic 3D platformer was a jumping off point that led to something entirely new. This is just an additional blow. To find out the actual composer of arguably the greatest video game soundtrack of all time was working on this, and I didn't realise. I love that they analysed Galaxy's soundtrack only to go, right, now let's deviate from this as far as possible. Apparently the eventual influences of the soundtrack and environment included Renaissance oil paintings, graffiti, comic books and ancient Greek pottery. These are not keywords that spring to mind when thinking of space. Even more so, Mario in space. The bottom line of it is, the whole feel of the Mario Galaxy games is something myself and many other fans have wanted Nintendo to revisit for some time. Yes, it's nostalgic, but that's just one of the reasons its essence continues to resonate with people. Sparks of Hope was a solid game, and you can tell a large amount of effort went into it, though highlights for me were moments like Glimpse in Illuma, are those star bits? The storybook-esque segments, and of course Rosalina, and seeing the Comet Observatory, which is sort of teased, but we never actually go there. And now I'm just imagining a Nintendo exec going, do we really need to say this? Is it absolutely necessary? Nope, okay, cut it. Is this just me pining over a Galaxy 3? That'll never happen. Absolutely. Mindless nostalgia bait is not good, but going out of your way to get rid of it is equally as damaging. This was a good Mario plus Rabbids game, but so many of the initial reactions to its reveal were, it's a Mario Galaxy themed Rabbids game, and the possibility of exploring environments and narrative elements not seen for well over a decade was tantalising. It's not like references to these games are oversaturated in any way. But the worst part is, the fans weren't wrong for once. The game originally was intended as a sort of homage to the Galaxy games. developed by people who grew up with them and appreciated their significance. But Nintendo themselves put a stop to that. And on that note, what are your thoughts on the revelation that Super Mario Galaxy elements were originally meant to form a large part of Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope? Please let me know down in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more content like this. See you next time.